Good evening. Going to bring the meeting to a start now. Can we start, Ms. Spitzer, with a roll call, please?
Would you like to repeat the public record?
I have that after flag salute.
That's fine.
Mrs. Bluntfield?
Here.
Mrs. Duggan?
Here.
Mr. Fowler?
Here?
Ms. Gong?
Here.
Mrs. Hughes? What the hell?
Bruce, you're next.
Suit up, you're in. Oh, boy. Okay,
Mrs. Keller.
I apologize.
No worries.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Here.
Mrs. O'Donnell? Mrs. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Reimer?
Here.
And Mrs. Santangelo?
Here.
Did I get everybody? I
We
did.
got it? After flag?
Thank you. I apologize.
All right. Could we all stand for a flag salute, please? I
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Welcome to a meeting of the Hunterdon Central Regional High School Board of Education. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are open to the public and media consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act, and that advance notice required therein has been provided. Meeting notice was also posted in the boardroom of the Upper School campus, sent to the Courier News, Star Ledger, Express Times, and the Hunterdon County Democrat, and sent to the clerks of Delaware Township, East Amwell Township, Flemington Borough, Raritan Township, and Reddington Township. The public will have an opportunity to be heard as shown on the agenda. Ms. Gong, would you mind to read our district mission statement, please?
It'd be my pleasure. Hunterdon Central is an innovative educational community dedicated to the intellectual, social, and emotional safety and growth of all students. While fostering curiosity and promoting wellness, we aspire to create powerful learning experiences, establish strong partnerships, and serve as contributing members of society.
Thank you. All right, we have two approval of minutes. The first is from December 20th. Can I have a motion to accept that, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bluntfield?
Abstain, I wasn't here.
Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowler?
Yes?
Ms. Gong?
Abstain since I wasn't a member of the board.
Ms. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer?
Abstain, I was absent.
And Mrs. Santangelo?
Abstain.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And next, we'll have an approval of the minutes from our January 4th, 2024 meeting. I have a motion to move that, please.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Before we do that, sorry, Robert's
course.
rules, there should be a correction. Do I say that now, or?
Of course.
All right, so under the Hunterdon, so this is where the committees, we've got the foundation, Hunterdon Central School Foundation. So just to be consistent, it should be Ms. Gong, sorry, didn't change my last name.
All right, any other changes? Thank you for catching that. Roll call with the changes as amended, please.
Mrs. Bluntfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
And Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries.
Okay. Next, we have correspondence received by the board. Everybody should have that in their agenda. I'm capturing one from December 20th. Do you accept that? We don't do a motion for that. Okay. And with those being on record, I will hand it over to Dr. Moore for superintendent's report.
Thank you, thank you. Not too much to update on since we just met earlier in the month, but we do have a presentation tonight from our Social Studies Department, Social Studies and Family and Consumer Science Departments under Mrs. Rebecca Lucas. So they'll be up in a moment. I did want to just share a couple of quick thoughts as mission moment, thanking the board for its support as we move deeper into the new year, and wanted to offer an observation from last week's back to school night. We had, for the first time, really opened up one of our 3 back-to-school nights to parents of rising 9th graders, so parents of current 8th graders. We had a good crowd here, and I want to thank Mr. Fowler and Ms. Gong and Ms. Peterson for joining us there and saying hello to all the parents. But one of the questions that I always like to ask is how many of you as parents, went to Hunterdon Central? And we always get a good number of hands up in the audience, and Mr. Fowler added, how many of your parents went to Hunterdon Central as parents, your parents, so, and again, several hands went up, so it's just striking. Always strikes me that for a suburban school, that's a very rare situation to have such roots, and it's a lot to be thankful for this school's commitment to and presence within its past and its heritage. It's just a wonderful place to be. So I wanted to note that tonight as part of the thoughts that come to mind as we're hearing tonight's the mission statement tonight. I also want to add we've had some rough weather over the past couple of weeks, and I wanted to thank our transportation department and our operations department for all the work that they do on such moments. I typically rise at about 4:30 on those mornings, and by then, I guess Dr. Butler may be on the road already to school, but we'll see. But by then, our transportation department, our maintenance crew have already done a full day's work to ensure that the campus is ready to go, whether we end up with a delay or we're not here at all, or we're lucky enough to have a full day. Now, I do have to point out that we have used up the 2 emergency days that we had set aside for this year's calendar, which means if we have any additional weather days, delayed openings don't count against us, early dismissals don't count against us, but if we lose a day, that's going to have to start coming out of scheduled holidays. So we look at, and the calendar on the agenda tonight is up for adjustment because of the days that we took. The calendar spells out the order by which we would go to holidays to fill in our 180 days. Every district must have 180 days for its students. State of New Jersey has not yet given a green light to virtual days to replace the 180 days. We do have some local districts who have virtual days on their calendar, but those are in addition to the 180 required. We have 180 on our calendar. So where I think Reddington, for example, uses some virtual days here and there, it's because they have more than 180 days on their calendar. So just some things to be aware of there. Don't want to be, unless you want to start losing some holidays down the road, pieces of spring break, et cetera. What is it? Pajamas inside out, flushing the ice in the toilet, whatever it is. We might not want to do that, or else you'll start losing days down the road. You've had your days, so it's good. But again, thanks to our transportation and to our operations departments for all that they do on those days. Some slight indications of some weather this week, but I'm not too concerned, and we'll just watch it as it comes. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Lucas to introduce her presentation tonight. Or Ms. Cangelozzi-Hayter, are you going to introduce? Come on up. Yeah.
Good evening. I'm here to introduce Mrs. Lucas and our amazing staff and students, representative of the Social Studies Department and the Family and Consumer Science Department. I did want to reacclimate our board kind of as to the format of our presentations because we have some new members here tonight. So these presentations are designed to give you kind of a window into the classrooms and the experiences that students have. They're not the more general information about department presentations. We do have presentations and information available on our website, though. If you wanted to take a look at that, our program of studies is recently updated. That's a little plug since we'll soon be doing scheduling. But tonight you'll get a little window into our Social Studies Department as well as our Family and Consumer Science Department. And with that, I will pass it over to Mrs. Lucas.
Thanks, Jess. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the new board members. Okay, so we're going to get started here. Thanks, Mr. Klein.
You put that nice screensaver up there for me. Okay, so tonight, what you're going to learn about a little bit is about what happens in social studies and in family and consumer science in relation to our board goals, our district goals, and then our particular goals in the social studies and in the family and consumer science departments. So I've chosen to highlight two specific areas, one in each department, that I'm going to share with you with Dr. Butler and Ms. Weiss and some of their students. So what I want to really start with is I want to share how each of my wonderful departments, how they work towards a lot of the goals and the department goals and district goals that we have. So what I have up on the screen right now are two of the board goals. One of them is powerful learning through personalization, and the other one is service within our community. And what we usually do here at Hunterdon Central is supervisors will take the district goals and we will use those and create department goals for our staff and our teachers to use to move their students forward in our school courses. So two of the goals that I wanted to focus on tonight are supporting personalization in learning, which happens in both family and consumer science and in social studies. And we were able to do that through a variety of strategies, through specific pedagogical strategies, through gathering instructional data, and through building relationships with our kids, with our students. And then also the implementation of instructional practices that are in the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, which would be key skills and literacies for family and consumer science and social studies, and then the social studies student learning standards from 2020. And what they do is they focus really on our disciplinary habits. So that would be what you would see if you took a career in family and consumer science, or what you would see if you were a historian or you took a career in the social sciences, which also includes geography, economics, sociology, psychology, not just history. So Maria Montessori, I'm sure you all know who she is and what she did, Montessori schools. And this quote, I think, really exemplifies what takes place in the two areas that I want to highlight tonight. So the greatest sign of success for a teacher is to be able to say that children are working as if I did not exist. So I know in one way that sounds like, oh, they're working without a teacher, but what that really means in social studies and family and consumer science is that our students are so well prepared and that the learning that they're doing is their own. It's authentic, it's real, so it's personalized. So what that will do for a student is they will then continue and broaden their learning experience, and the teachers are just really guiding the students. So that's what you'll see tonight. Okay, so family and consumer science will be the first one up. And I highlighted three areas here: career readiness, life literacy and key skills, Little Devils, and early childhood and child development. Now, in family and consumer science, and I know you probably don't get a lot of information about a department that we would usually call or used to call electives, but we really try not to use that term anymore. This is a department that has a lot of career choices for students, and that's why we focus on career readiness, life literacy, key skills. As you know, we have a teacher shortage in our state and in our country, and this is an area where we can actually grow teachers. We have 3 courses that are dual enrollment. We have child development, early childhood, and intro to education. That our students can take in order for them to learn more about early childhood education, child development, and then intro to education, where we have a teacher cadet program. Little Devils is our preschool. It's our learning lab that our early childhood and child development students take part in for a very nominal fee. We have parents who bring their students here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and our students practice their personalized lesson plans that they've created with our 4- and 5-year-old Little Devils. Early childhood and child development, I just really mentioned that. That's powerful learning through personalization, and I will let Ms. Weiss and her students talk about that. So I'm going to bring Ms. Weiss and Jack and Sarah up. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Weiss. I started at Hunterdon Central just about a year ago, last October, and I'm very happy to be here and part of your family and community. It's something that's very important to me, being part of a community, and our class is unique because we make great connections with the community
here, Flemington, Meriden, and I know I'm not, new to the area, so I don't know all of the surrounding towns. But I know we service quite a few. And then we also work within Hunterdon Central's community, kind of looking at merging all of our departments and bringing everybody together. So one of the things that we do in this classroom is we do project-based learning. So our students are not required to take tests and quizzes, but they are always required at the end of every unit to present their learnings in powerful, meaningful ways. And so with that, they are allowed to have choice. They choose the way that they want to present their data. They choose the way that they want to go about their research. Is it online? Is it through books? Is it through articles? And what they're doing is really taking control of their own learning. So I may introduce slightly a topic, ask them to take a little bit of time on their own to figure some things out, get their own opinions. Then we really talk about how that connects to what is going on maybe in the world or in the teaching community and the expectations that are put on us in working with the children. I like to do that so that they're not just regurgitating back to me what I tell them, but really making meaningful connections to everything that they're learning in the classroom. And I think that the choice is important because I can tell you that I am not an artist. I did copy this lovely drawing to utilize using, the board and my little pencil there for a while. So I may not be an artist, but some of my students are. And so for them to be able to present their data in that way is meaningful to their peers, to themselves, and really puts value in what they're doing. I also find that they put more time and effort into their projects and they actually want to share what they've learned with their peers and at home as well. Oops, sorry. So I have Jack Bernetti and Sarah Barella who are going to share a little bit about their experiences with our little devils. We do service 3, 4, and up to 5-year-olds right before they go to kindergarten. And we have a unique setup, or I think somewhat unique setup, in how they run the classroom, because ultimately on those days, I spend the first 2 weeks showing them how I would implement it, and then it becomes their room. So this is all about them.
Hi, my name is Jack Bernetti. I'm part of Mrs. Weiss' 2A block class for Little Devils. We work on a 3-day rotation. Kids come Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. First day we do observations. Observations are direct observations. So we note down for about 10-15 minutes about what the kids are actually doing, the motions they're doing, the things they are saying. And then there is a topic question for our lesson planning that we resort back to our observations, and we answer that question to what the kids have done. Don't do the planning.
On our lesson planning days, we spend the entire class writing our lesson plan in a students will be able to format. We have a hook which introduces the students to what we are going to be teaching them for the day. Then we have our instruction, which is where we teach the students our lesson, and then we have our assessment, which is how we assess the success of our lesson. And then we have a closure, which brings our lesson to a close and ends the lesson for the students.
Teaching our lesson plan, we go over our introduction, where we're introducing the little ones of what they're going to be learning that day. And then once they have figured out what they are learning, then we'll do our instruction, tell them what to do, and then, like Sarah said, we had to assess them after our lesson.
And how do you assess yourself?
We assess ourselves. There's a reflection form of our lesson, and we kind of answer questions based on how well it went, what things we could change. Yeah, that's basically it. Should I go to the next slide?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And then we try to work with our community as much as possible here at Central. Last year we had Mr. Brandt come in and read a book for the kids. STEM activities with Ms. Cangelozzi Hayden. Our operations department did a Santa visit, which the kids very much loved that. They came and gave candy canes out to the kids. We had sent emails out to the teachers surrounding our classroom to do a Halloween trick-or-treating activity. So we did that with the kids. And then I had emailed one of my old history teachers here, Miss Van Doren. She had brought in munchkins for the little ones, so that was also very exciting for them.
So these are just a snippet of things that we do. Like, I have a million more pictures. We brought in baby chicks, and we're looking to do that again this spring. That brought people from all over the school in to come see the baby chicks, and we did a whole science lesson with our little ones, and also just how to be kind and care for living things. So it was a great thing to bring everyone together. And then you heard beep, beep, beep out in the hallway, so everyone was jumping in to see what was going on. Aside from just having Mr. Brandt, we invite guest readers for Read Across America in, and we had multiple staff members. I mean, we had secretaries, Dr. Moore came in and read. We had DRA staff come in. So it was open to anyone within the school community who had available time and wanted to come in. We're really lucky because we're a class that people want to visit. We're out in the hallway playing games and doing activities, and what our big ones learn is that that's all a part of learning for our little ones. And so our little ones learn through play. I try to bring that into the big ones as well and remind them that you can enjoy yourselves. We learn about Maslow's hierarchy. They learn about lesson planning as we tier it for each class level. So child development does a very simple lesson format, as you heard. Then it grows with them. So if they take early childhood, it goes into a more collegiate-based plan where they're doing standards and talking about how do you differentiate a lesson, and then it goes on from there. So we're really trying to prepare our students as best as possible. She mentioned that we do students will be able to. I teach our students a 3-point objective. So they do students will be able to, by, they list their activities, so that how do you know your lesson was successful? That's how you then reflect on what you did well and what you might want to do again. So there's just a lot of components, and I wish I could and honestly, I would have you all in. So if you're ever around and you want to come in, it's the best place to be. It's the best of both worlds. And the reality is it does become their classroom. And so it's their lessons, it's their plans. I'm there to guide them, but ultimately I always say if I didn't walk in that door, especially on a preschool day, they would run it, you wouldn't even know. I mean, they take over. And that 3-day rotation is truly a rotation. They're broken into 3 groups. One group is observing, one is planning, one is teaching. And that works so that our little ones aren't overwhelmed, but our big ones also are able to really make that connection with our students. So we do a lot with the community. We had the fire department come out as well. We have authors come in from the community and meet with our students. We offer a really unique program that I am so excited to be a part of, and I love bringing it to our students, to our community, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
May I make a
Thank you.
comment or have a question for you? One, I
Sure.
think it's great, and do you ever get to go visit a Montessori classroom?
No, we have not.
Maybe a field trip one of these days.
That's a great idea. Thank you. Thank you. I have to tell you, in September, when you walk into the early childhood Little Devils classroom, it's just empty. It's nothing. And I said to Allie, how come your room it's not decorated? And she said, the students do that. So she has the students set up her room, their room, just as if they would if it was a preschool or early childhood. So it's really cool to watch them take ownership of that. So thank you.
I will point out, I always say, one of my lessons is building a wonderful classroom community. I just don't do it. They do it, because like I said, it's their room.
Okay, so we're going to move on to social studies. So what I chose to focus on in social studies is inquiry, because inquiry really is personalization at its best. And I just kind of started my slides with a few quotes from the National Council for the Social Studies, and then our New Jersey Student Learning Standards, our disciplinary habits dealing with inquiry. So what I want you to take from this slide is the idea that inquiry is an approach that most social studies groups, nonprofits, academics in the social studies world believe is really the key way for students to understand and learn about what's going on in our world today. So it's the idea of looking at, thinking, creating a question, doing research, questioning themselves, talking with their peers and their colleagues, speaking with their teacher, and then reformulating the question, and then diving deeper and deeper into whatever that question or whatever that problem is or was, and making connections to what's going on in the current world or what might be happening, and how that might connect to the past or the present. So it's not just taking a look at what happened in the past, it's making those connections for our kids. So some of our New Jersey learning standards, one of the practices that really, I think, contributes to personalization is the idea of inquiry through developing questions and planning. So what I have on these slides, and I'm not going to read them word for word, it's just the idea of developing questions and how those questions will enable our students to understand the human connection or the human complexity. The idea of addressing real-world issues, the idea of incorporating questions, like I said earlier, it's not just history, it's social science. So incorporating questions from psychology, from sociology, from economics, from geography. And then a lot of these inquiries, what we do is they investigate the idea or the diversity of America, of groups, of societies, and how that affects us. So for this, I chose global studies and Dr. Butler and some of his students, Kate and Ashley, right? No. Kate, Ashley, and Studi. Okay, yes. And the idea of global studies is a required course. It's a graduation requirement, and it fulfills the world history requirement in New Jersey. And it is we don't have levels in social studies. We have AP or we have college prep. So this is a college prep course. So you get a wide variety of students and a wide variety of student interests in here. So I'm going to now hand the mic over to Dr. Butler and his students so that he can share with you his inquiry project that he did in global studies.
So this is a project that started, I'm going to say the teachers at Hunterdon Central wrote a book on this called Letting Go. Stutzman, Donhauser, and a former media specialist that worked here, Ms. Hersey, all wrote a book. I'm going to say it was 2010, 2011, and it's all about inquiry-based learning. So when I started doing this, it was more based on summer classes that I took with them and learning how to do this. And over the last 5 or 6 years, I've just developed it more and more. I've tried it in different classes. Global studies seems to be the one it works the best in. I've tried it when I taught Holocaust and human behavior. It doesn't work in an AP class because you're on a much tighter schedule. So the idea is, for me, I set forward a standard, and I'll actually... Oh, no. Jeff doesn't have access. How do I fix that? Can I just use another account? I'm sorry.
You can, but I don't want you to log in while we're live.
Okay.
What if okay. Cybersecurity, very important. All right.
It's on Gmail. I don't care. That's my password.
Is it at Gmail or is that
It's HRIS.
All right, that's okay. Just go to use another.
You tried to help me with that, and I ignored you.
It's okay. It's a lot of pressure. It's okay. It will be worth it. I promise the week is worth it. Oh my
Gotta get my phone.
Cybersecurity is so important nowadays. We have a two-step verification we're trying to go through. While we wait for the verification, I will vouch for what Dr. Butler said. Mrs. Lucas and I did go into his class this past year and watch part of the discussions that was based around inquiry. It was Dr. Butler didn't have to say a word the entire class. The students led the discussions in their groups, and it was absolutely amazing. So I will vouch, he's not
Thank
just
you.
playing that up. See, look it, and I think you're good now.
All right.
So let's see. Continue, no. Uh-oh. Do we want, no, okay, I think you're good. Yes, we needed that.
There it goes. Okay.
We're good.
All right. Sorry about that. I thought it was going to be on a different computer. So this is basically the project, and what I did was I developed a standard that I wanted them to follow, and then basically outlined the essential questions and did all the stuff that they needed to do for each activity. So we start with the Renaissance, then we go to the Reformation, then we go to the Scientific Revolution, then we go to the Enlightenment. So throughout the project, as they're doing it, they're basically, these are the essential questions on the top. The first thing I have them do is write the standard in their own words. So that way I know that they understand what they're doing. Because a lot of times with the jargon and everything else that's used in educational standards, that it's not always, a lot of times it goes over my head, so I'd imagine it would go over the students' heads. So first thing they do is they write the standard in their own words, and then there's essential questions that they answer throughout. And then each activity has essential questions that they have to answer. So the idea is that as they're answering the questions, they're building their knowledge base. And over the last couple years, this year in particular, I started coming up to the IMC to work with the media specialists about about doing research. So after having gone through my dissertation and doing research on my own, I feel it's one of the most important aspects of going to college is knowing how to do research. So they get taught how to do research in the IMC with the media specialists, going through different databases and doing all the things that they need to do in order to continue. So then when they finish each activity, after we finish activity 1, the class develops a rubric. And then I break them up into groups. They develop the rubric of how they're going to be graded. I list out what's proficient, and then they come up with what's developing and what is advanced. And then when each activity is done, they sit down and they grade each other. And then they get a grade based on how well they grade each other. And then once they grade each other, it's given back to the person who did it originally so that they can fix whatever they need to fix, so that when I finally grade it, they're getting the best grade they can possibly get, and they're learning it. After they grade it, they sit and talk to each other about the activity that they did, so that they can learn from each other. They're not only getting the research they did, they're getting the research that their fellow students did, or their peers did. So then as we go through it, they basically do the same thing over and over again. And now at the end of each activity, they have an EQ reflection, and it basically asks the question, how do your text and research relate to each other, and the knowledge that you had going into it. Then the standards reflection, what process have you made in order to reach the standard. And then my favorite is the time reflection, because the time reflection is asking them to be honest. I gave you 2 blocks of class time to work on this. How much time did you spend on it? And how much time did you end up having to do at home? So as they're doing that, I tell them I don't grade that, but it's not helping them if they lie, because they're only lying to themselves, because it's teaching them time management as well. So if I'm giving you 2.5 hours of class time, of my class time to do this, and I think it can be done in that time, and you're still spending an hour at home, what are you doing during class? Because I can walk around the class as much as I want, but if they want to try to get away without doing work in my class, there's a possibility they're going to not be able to finish it. So it goes all the way through, and at the end, instead of giving a test, they have a big score discussion where they basically talk about everything that they learned and how it all built on each other. So this is something that just, I hope it gets better every year. Ashley and Kate had the class last year, so they have some reflections, and Studi is in my class right now. So what do you think? Like, what was your impression going in?
All right.
Mm-hmm.
When I first explained this, the looks on some of their faces and the size of the project, I think Ashley's final plan was 24 pages long,
Yeah,
with
it
all the
was-
work
it
that
was-
she
yeah,
put
it was.
into it, with all the
That's
comments and
surprising you
everything
know that
else.
number.
Of course I know that
I'm
number.
impressed. I'm impressed.
So,
Okay, well, Kate, you're going to talk about.
So when we first opened up the doc, it took forever to load. It was huge. It was daunting. The essential question for the entire assignment just seemed like, where are we going to get this answer? It was broad, and the answer just didn't seem like it was in sight. But the activities really broke down what exactly we needed to know to be able to answer this question, and we were able to answer it and do research how best fit us as students. Sometimes as class, we watched videos together and took notes on that, and then we did individual research. And if someone likes watching a video and taking notes on that fit their learning style the best, then they did that. And maybe I like reading databases and taking notes on that. And when we were able to meet after we finished the assignment, we got together and we were able to fill in each other's gaps in our research, which helped us expand our knowledge on what we missed.
I think just the way the doc and the whole assignment was organized was very beneficial for everybody in our class, and like it kind of catered to everybody's needs and wants. Like we had partner discussions, and then at the end of it we had a whole big group discussion with all of our findings. Since we did it in class, like Dr. B was also always a resource and always available to help us. And like we had the independent work and could do our research on our own and take independent notes, which like different people like different things. And the more time and the more we just spent on actually learning it got very easy to manage. And by the end of it, like it was just like, oh yeah, we know how to do this. So, and I think we also learned very helpful things, especially to prepare us like for college, as Dr. B was saying, because I wrote down like we were doing MLA citations, which like I've done before at past projects, but like this was more extensive, I guess. Like it was more than just one source. And so that's a very helpful skill to learn. And all of the reflections that we did on ourselves and on our peers was also very helpful, because I enjoyed getting the feedback, and I liked that we were able to give others feedback as well, and we were using different sources and finding different research. So by talking to others, we were getting their information, and it was more out of our level, instead of reading like a college documentary or college source about this topic. Like we could use each other to understand it more and be able to like actually grasp the information.
Like Ashley said, Dr. B was always there to help us, but I feel like some days I walked in the door, said hi, and didn't say anything until 80 minutes later when the block was done.
Yeah.
We just did our research. I mean, knowing me, that probably didn't happen, but but we were able to, as guided as this doc was, it was free, and we were able to find what suits us the best and where we tend to lack in our research and our strategy for just research in general, which definitely will help us.
Which was
in the years to
also
come.
helpful to manage all the other work that we had in other classes, because junior year was definitely a very stressful year for myself and probably for Kate too. So it was like a break. We had a break to do our own thing, and it was more manageable, and like it was a weight lifted off our shoulders.
I feel like one of the main things that I really enjoyed about this project was we got into a different space from the regular classroom that we're normally in, and we got a chance to explore the databases and everything to help us prepare for college. And I feel like that was like very helpful for the future especially. And another thing I really liked is that we kind of got to reflect with our peers. And before we reached out to Mr. Butler, like we got to collaborate with others and we got to grade ourselves. And I just really thought that that's something that's like different from most classes that we normally do. So I just really felt like the collaboration was like one of the best parts. And also like it was when they first introduced the project, I'm gonna be honest, I was a little terrified because it was a lot of work. And like I thought I couldn't handle at first, because it was like the databases and everything, like you can't use like Google like you normally would, like you have to kind of cite all your sources and everything. So I thought I couldn't do it, but like the more you work and the more like time you spend on it, I felt like it was a little more easier the more time you spent on it.
As stressful as it looked, it really wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't really that stressful.
And I think we all had a good grasp on what we really did learn. And our discussion was good.
The discussion between two group discussion in your class went for an hour in two separate discussions in the class. Each
we all
went
really
for about an
grasped
hour.
what we learned.
And we all like to talk.
We all love to talk.
So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Good job.
thank you, Dr. B.
I felt like I should say that.
So it's fine. I got it. So to just recap and to touch on a few things that Dr. Butler forgot as the students were finishing up is the idea that our students were having these academic conversations. They were filling in their own gaps. They were having civil discourse. They were agreeing. They were disagreeing. And they were learning. They were learning a whole lot. So thank you. Thank you for sharing. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I just unplugged it. You're done, right?
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Questions for Ms. Lucas?
I just wanted to say thank you to both sets of students who came out tonight to share with us, because that's kind of my favorite part of these presentations, is to see what you guys are doing. The preschool program looks just really cool and something I wish we had as when I was a student. And I'm positively giddy that you guys got into research so much, because that's kind of my favorite thing in the world. So I'm excited to hear that you guys get excited about, that you guys actually started to enjoy that, because it's really a great superpower. So thank you for coming and sharing.
Great.
Is Raritan Township and Reddington Township's full-day preschool going to impact the Red Devils program?
Eventually it will, yeah. Yeah. So we'll have to reconfigure and reassess at that point. So we've already been talking about it as what that might look like and what our courses might look like. So.
Yeah, it's important to note that the Red Devils is part of our sort of teacher academy. So those students are going through a very specific set of courses in order to become sort of pre-teachers. And there are certainly opportunities, I guess, to work with our sending K-8s on how we might continue to integrate our students' learning into their operations. But that's there are also an awful lot of rules about the pre-K expansion that we would have to fit into as well. So we're eager to continue those conversations with them.
We're also planning on this year, and when full-day pre-K happens, we are planning to go out with our teacher cadets to observe in school districts, so we may have to open that up a little more broadly if we couldn't have our little devils in the building anymore due to the full day. So.
And if I could just ask the last three students, did you use a lot of artificial intelligence for your research? Oh, come on. Really? Not at all.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. And I think one of the things thank you. Let's give a round of applause. This notion of inquiry, which they label in social studies and English as inquiry learning, I think we're hearing about it in all of the presentations, not only the ones that we've started to hear this year, but this is sort of the highlights of what they've shared in the past as well. So it really comes down to student choice, student voice, their own efficacy in their learning, and they're pretty amazing folks. You guys are amazing. So thank you. Thank you. And I think with that, Mr. Fowler, I just have a couple of quick organizational things to give a quick preview on, and then my report is completed. We have our HIB and suspension report there, and there are a couple of HIBs for us to take action on under the organizational items. We have it is School Board Recognition Month, so it feels funny for you to vote for yourself on this, but vote for the person next to you, I guess is what we're asking you to do. And I will read that into the record when we get to the organizational items. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have the calendar revision as a result of our closure last week. So with that, thanks to Mrs. Lucas and all of the folks who came out to help with the Family Consumer Science and Social Studies report. I turn it back to you, Mr. Fowler, that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. All right, at this point in time, I'd like to open our meeting for the first public comment of the evening. This will be on any public comments to do with tonight's agenda and tonight's agenda only. There'll be a later public comment for any open items. So we'll provide 5 minutes for everybody. Just write your name down at the podium, announce yourself and where you're from, and then share your thoughts for tonight's agenda.
Okay, good evening. Steve Farcio, Raritan Township. I don't normally do this, but I'm going to do it tonight because I want to make sure that I respect your time and do not go over my time. So I don't normally write stuff down. I normally just go off the cuff. But I felt like this should probably something that I am able to read and get into the record quickly. Agenda item I, Personnel Committee, and Section 1, retirements. After 28 and a half years as a full-time teacher, Steve Gibble is retiring from a place that he once loved more than anything. It's actually more than 28 and a half years. He began substitute teaching here at Hunterdon Central in 1989. He graduated in 1980, and where he was a standout wrestler and athlete. Went on to University of North Carolina on a wrestling scholarship. In 1989, when he came here, it's safe to say that he dedicated his entire professional life to this school, and he did so with pride. And this included coaching 3 sports: football, wrestling, and lacrosse. He was inducted into the NJSIAA Coaches Hall of Fame in 2008 for wrestling. He served on the NJSIAA Wrestling's Rules and Regulations Committee for 4 consecutive years, something that I don't believe is even permitted to be done anymore. But because they had thought so highly of Steve, they let him do that. Despite how great of a coach he was, and I was one of those people, I graduated in 1993, played football and basketball and baseball here. He coached me in football. He was a better person and role model for all of the kids. If you were at the Board of Education meetings in the fall of 2014, when the former superintendent, former principal, former Board of Education attorney, and select Board of Education members railroaded Mr. Gibble, you would have saw this place. I don't know if it was this place. I think it was. I think it was in the other room over there. There were several people in here, and I mean packed house, groves of people coming in here to support their coach. But not because he won a lot of matches or games. It was because of how much of a positive impact he had on their lives. I do not need to go into his accomplishments as a coach, because if Steve was here, he would tell you that they mean nothing. What counts was his impact as a role model to these kids. Mr. Gibble has been defined by several news outings, even some television publications, as a legend in New Jersey high school sports, and rightfully so. But he is indisputably more of a wonderful father, husband, teacher, sibling, and friend. Hunterdon Central just lost one of the best ambassadors it ever had for this school, not even realizing it. A person who has been treated horribly since the fall of 2014. Someone who is still fighting for his reputation, all because a select few people in power had bad intentions. He deserved better from this school that he loved. Just to give you an idea of who he is, in 2009, there was a wrestler on his team that was very poor. Mr. Gibble would drive him back to where he lived at the Fountain Motel. One day, he went to the Fountain Motel, and his mother, the child's mother, came out of the hotel room and said, "You can't stay here anymore." Said that to his kid. Mr. Gibble got out of the car, told the kid to go into his motel room, collect his gatherings, and he was going to come with him. Stayed with Mr. Gibble and Mrs. Gibble. They became his parents. That's the type of person that was railroaded in 2014. Now, I hope to God that you guys are seeking information. If you could just give me 1 minute,
Got a minute.
I appreciate it.
Yep. Got a minute.
I hope to God that you guys are seeking information on the testimony that's occurred in this case. It's been 9 years, for God's sakes, okay? And I think I would take particular interest in Ms. Steffner's testimony. just finished in December. Ms. Blufffield, you'd be very interested to know her testimony, because according to her, the whole taking of the Jewish holidays away was not a big deal, and there was no big rift with you, and you caused no problems for her. I hope that you guys, and I don't know, I mean, you have social studies people here. He's retiring from that department. The guy deserved better. He's a really good person. He loved this place. He loved this place. And I'm not sure that he's retiring because he really wants to, but I think it's just he's had enough. So thank you. Again, I appreciate all your volunteer here. I know it's not easy. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farcio. Anyone else? Seeing none? Yes. Yep. And tonight, at this point in time, we're going to be speaking about items on the agenda. There'll be a time later if you'd just like to speak about anything else.
My name is...
If you could just write down your name right there on the pad. Thank you.
My name is Joseph Balmos. I don't think anybody here knows me. My son is a sophomore at school, and perhaps one of the two HIBs you're going to be discussing later pertains to my son. My son has been bullied much more than I was aware of, but as time goes on and I speak to his friends and his friends' parents, I learn more about what's happening in this particular class. Now, I've never heard of the term HIB until the middle of last month, and it is the process is ongoing. My son, this problem continues. It has not been resolved. I write Mr. Ebner probably twice, maybe 3 times a week. Not last week, of course, because we had 1 2/3 day of school. But another incident occurred today. I would like this situation to be resolved. My son, every child who comes to Hunterdon Central has this tremendous opportunity to learn. I'm very impressed with everything I heard here today, but it's meaningless if the child is being harassed in an AP course. That's very surprising. My son has never been bullied or harassed. We moved to Delaware Township so he could go to Hunterdon Central because we heard it was a pretty strict school. This has not been our experience with this case. My son has, my wife, my son's mother, she's been a teacher for over 20 years, so we're a very pro-school, pro-teacher. My sons do all their homework every night. It comes before everything, their education. And my son's having a hard time coping. Now, he's spoken with people at the school, and like every teenage boy, I'm fine. That's what he says. But he's not fine. I'm not fine. And you shouldn't be fine either. I've spoken to lots of parents. I've been really surprised how many parents have talked to their kids, mostly from Delaware Township, and they've either been bullied, harassed, or intimidated, or they see it. And I say, you got to report it. That's what I ended up doing. I see there's 7 more reports this month on the agenda. I don't know if that's due to me, but I'll tell you, all of their children are very loath to report anything, especially the teenage boys. I'm here because I want this to stop. I want it to stop now. I don't know what more they could do to this student. I don't know what you're doing. There's a lot of privacy issues involved. I understand that. But if the behavior continues in the classroom, I know whatever the school is doing is simply not working. That's all I'd like to say.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? All right. Seeing and hearing none, I will close open comment, and we will move to our organizational items. I believe I passed the baton back over to you for school board recognition.
Yeah, and as I said, January School Board Recognition Month, so I'm just going to read this out for all of you with all of our thanks. So, whereas the New Jersey School Boards Association has declared January 2024 to be School Board Recognition Month, a time when all residents can acknowledge the contributions made by our local school board members, and whereas the Hunterdon Central Regional High School Board of Education is one of 581 local school boards in New Jersey, which sets policies and oversees operations for public school districts, and whereas the Hunterdon Central Regional High School Board of Education embraces the goal of high-quality education for all New Jersey public school students, and whereas New Jersey's local school boards help determine the educational goals for approximately 1.4 million children. Oops, my time's up. That's it. That's all you get. In pre-kindergarten through 12th grade, and whereas New Jersey's 5,000 local school board members who receive no remuneration for their services act as advocates for public school students as they work with administrators, teachers, and parents for the betterment of public education, and whereas school boards strive to provide the resources necessary to meet the needs of all students, including those with special needs, and whereas boards of education provide accountability to the public, they communicate the needs of the school district to the public, and they convey to school administrators the public's expectations for the schools. And whereas New Jersey can take pride in its schools, which rank among the nation's best in key achievement indicators such as the National Assessment of Educational Progress scores and the preparation for college through advanced placement offerings and SAT assessments. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Hunterdon Central Regional High School Board of Education does hereby recognize the services of local school board members throughout New Jersey as we join communities statewide in observing January 2024 as School Board Recognition Month, and be it further resolved that the Hunterdon Central Regional High School Board of Education urges all New Jersey citizens to work with their local boards of education and public school staffs toward the advancement of our children's education.
Thank you, Dr. Moore.
Thank you.
That was a mouthful. Would anybody like to make the uncomfortable motion in supporting this resolution, not just for us, but for all school board members across the state?
So moved.
Second, yeah.
Okay, any discussions? Okay, vote please.
Mrs. Bloodfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowler?
Yes,
All yes, motion carries.
thank you. Next, we will have a motion for our calendar revision as a result of our school days that have been closed.
Yes, so I'll go ahead and make the motion.
Okay, can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second? Thank you. Discussion?
Yeah, so what happens when we have an emergency day, and so January 16th was our second emergency day, as I mentioned earlier, that's our last one. When we have an emergency day like that, also the end of the semester is pushed back by one day. So the early dismissal on the day of the end of the semester and then the start of the second semester have both been advanced, or well pushed, further down the road by one day. So those are the changes that you'll be approving tonight as we move forward on the rest of the calendar for the year, with fingers crossed that we're done with all of that.
All right, thank you. So with that, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Bloodfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowler?
Yes,
All yes, motion carries.
thank you. And finally, under organizational items, we have two HIBs to approve or to acknowledge, 2324-005 and 006, as indicated on our agenda. Can I have a motion for those, please?
So moved.
Okay, before we go to vote, I just want to confirm, on our agenda, it says in closed session on December 22nd.
So it should be,
Was it not December 20th?
it was December 20th, yes.
Okay. All right. So with that amendment, could I have a roll call vote on these, please?
Mrs. Blutfeld?
Abstain.
Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Abstain.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Abstain.
Mr. Reimer?
Abstain due to absence.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Abstain.
And Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
With 3, we have a majority of the quorum. The motion passes.
Thank you. Student life. Mr. Reimer?
This evening, we have 4 items to move for student life and programming, and I'd like to first, on behalf of the board, start out by congratulating the Hunterdon Central dance team who qualified to attend the ESPN Wild World of Sports dance competition in Orlando, Florida. The first item is to approve an overnight field trip, which will be held in Orlando at that event from January 31st to February 5th, and we'd like to wish them very good luck, and if we stay tuned, we might even be lucky enough to see them on ESPN as they compete down there if they advance. The second item is for 2 new clubs. The Hunterdon Hold'em Club, which is dedicated to learning the finer points and strategies of Texas Hold'em poker. And the second one is the Biological Association, and that's geared to prepare kids to compete and qualify for the Bio Olympiad. So we wish them good luck as we move forward. The third item this evening is 2 student club name changes. Fiddle Club will be changing its name to include more stringed instruments, and their new name will be All Strings Attached, which is quite clever, I think. And the second name change for this evening will be One is Greater Than 99 Student Ministry. They're going to just change that slightly to One is Greater Than 99 Christian Student Ministry. And the fourth item tonight is for tuition and transportation, and that's related to transportation contracts for the following special education students during the 23-24 school years related to services as required in their individual education plans. That amount is $46,675. And I would like to move to approve those 4 items for student life and programming.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Blutfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Operations and Transportation, Ms. Duggan?
Okay. Tonight, we have 8 items that we're going to be asked to move. The first one is the financial reports for the end of November 2023. The second one is the invoices for December 2023. That's moving to present the payment of invoices in the amount of $7,161,839.60. We have one thing I wanted to mention here is this number is a bit higher than it normally is, and that's because we were paying some outstanding bills from the summer work that was done for our capital projects, like the softball fields and baseball fields and things like that. So there were quite a few in that lump sum. We've got transfers for the end of December, or for the month of December. The fourth one is to do a memorandum for the agreement between our school and the Raritan Township Police Department. This is an annual update. The fifth is a settlement agreement that we've learned about in executive session, and I think everybody knows about that. The sixth is to actually approve the SSP architects to start 4 projects that we're going to be working on for this year with our capital budget. We've got the 910 teachers room and print shop renovation, the 11-12 locker conversions, I think that's the last one.
It's close.
Close to the last one. The 11-12 room 801 alterations, and then the fourth item is the bus maintenance garage HVAC. So this is one where we have a lot of bus maintenance going on in the summertime, and there is absolutely no AC in that garage, and it gets very, very hot and unbearable. Number 7 is move to accept the donations with gratitude from the following participants for the corporate sponsorship program. And you'll see we have different levels here. We've got the gold, silver, bronze, and red. And the total donations this year amounted to $43,500. It's a little bit down from last year, $2,700 down from last year, but we would definitely like to thank all these sponsors for their generous participation. And finally, we have 2 professional contracts that we're looking to move. This is with New Pathways, which is a home instruction provider, and the second one is Normandy Studio, which is a photography company. So with that, I'd like to move operations and transportation items 1 through 8.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Just had a quick question regarding the architecture piece. Is it related to, I know on the proposed budget, there were some administrative things regarding counseling renovation, teacher suite, business office addition. Is that part of that, or is that something different? I just wanted to understand that better.
No, these 4 projects don't include the house office. They do include teacher's room renovation. They don't include the business office. What's also included here are the locker conversions. That's the bench seating for the students out in the hallways. Room 801 alteration is a mental health and counseling suite that's going to be redone for the students, and then the bus maintenance garage. I don't recall if we had the others on a prior agenda.
In the budget.
In the budget.
We approved more when we did our budget last year, and those have not come through to fruition yet. So we're still working through that with the architect and design. They may not come through until next year, and they'll be eliminated.
I just wanted to know, I guess, with the teacher's room, like what the need was and just understand it better.
So we have a print shop that we used to do a lot of copying. So the print shop has closed, which has opened that space now for what's across the hall are some subpar teacher rooms that we can now move into this new space and then repurpose those spaces across the hall for various things. So this is a collaborative project that we're working on with the teachers to design that space for them. I don't anticipate that at the end of it, well, we'll have to see. We'll have to see what the architects come through with what their feelings are. And if it's if it's beyond the pale of what we had planned for the project, then we might have to kick that down the road as well.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Moore, it might be helpful to maybe try to take the new Board of Ed members on a walking tour of the campus, because that helped me at least visualize what these are.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's a good thought, and maybe we could work that in for February. Maybe we'll do an earlier start, or we also have the 2 members coming in this week, but I don't know if a walking tour will be, we have a lot of marathon meetings with you on Wednesday, but if you want to take a walking tours after, otherwise we can schedule one separately.
So long as it's not snowing or sleeting.
That's right. Wednesday, we are looking for a little ice on Wednesday, right? But yeah, I think a walking tour would be a fantastic idea. Yeah, just wear good shoes.
Thank you.
All right, with no other discussion, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Duggan?
So I'm going to abstain on number 2, but I'll say yes, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Blutfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Blutfield?
Yes, personnel has 17 items on the agenda that we're voting on tonight.
First one, we have 2 retirements. As Mr. Farcio had pointed out, we have our longtime social studies teacher, Stephen Gibble. I think he left, but I'm glad that he pointed out many of his contributions to the district. And we also have our Director of Special Services, Carol Webb, with 8 years of service. So I'd like to thank you both for all of your contributions and wish you well in retirement. We also have, in number 2, 2 resignations, a Spanish teacher and a security officer. And then in number 3, under the appointments, you'll see we have a replacement for the campus security officer. We also have a replacement world language teacher and a vice principal to fill the opening that we had there. We have in item 4, we have our hourly appointments for the snow removal crew and HCTV technicians. We are appointing chaperones and athletic event workers in 5 and 6. 7, we're approving radio show monitors, and that's for kids working after school on radio projects. In 8, we have 2 new substitute teachers. 9, we are appointing for curriculum writing for the Aspire Study Skills course revision. In 10, we are approving a boys' head volleyball coach. We have 2 robotics volunteers in 11, some professional development in 12, and that includes a counselor attending a teenage mental health training workshop. 13, we are approving a small stipend for Paula Graham, and that's for a wellness grant that was given to us by our insurance carrier. We are approving an internship in counseling in 14. 15, we have some policies for a second reading, sick leave, examination for cause, and attendance. And then we are abolishing the old policies in 16. And finally, in 17, we are approving a world language teacher for childcare leave. So with that, I will move personnel items 1 through 17.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just want to share, again, congratulations and admiration for our 2 retirees, Mr. Gibble, who at 28 and a half years probably started almost exactly around the same time that I did in the profession. So that's something as we look back on all the ways in which the profession has changed and all the things that teachers have done over the past 30 years. Clearly, his list of contributions is long. And Dr. Webb has been, by my side since I arrived and has been doing a fantastic job in the Special Services Department. We've been through some difficult things together, but at the same time, it was an honor, certainly, to watch the growth of your department under your helm with Unified Sports and our autism program and so much else. So thank you for your service as well. We will miss you and Mr. Gibble.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Bloodfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Any other committee or liaison reports? Didn't think so? No? Good. Oh, yeah, you can if you like. Yeah, please.
Yes, so we had our first meeting for the superintendent search, and just to give everyone an idea of what we will be doing, we're actually doing 2 searches. We have our most immediate need. We have the interim superintendent, who we need to hire before the end of March, and then the longer-term search for our full-time superintendent. For the interim superintendent, because of the short time frame and the pool of superintendents is actually much, much smaller, I've been working with New Jersey school boards who had some ideas of some people who she thought would, our Gwen Thornton, who's our representative, thought would be a good fit for our district, people who live somewhere not too far, have high school experience. I mean, those are things that are important. And then their ability and willingness to come to work, which isn't always easy when you're bringing back somebody who's retired. So I'm in the process now of collecting some resumes. We'll send those out to the committee, and then we will invite maybe 2, I'd say 3 at most, people to come in and interview with the entire board. We will probably need to do a special session, or have an executive session, special meeting. Thinking sometime in February, might have to be like a Saturday morning. Might be a good idea if everyone can start letting me know what their availability is. I have no idea even if the candidates would be available, but just to start figuring out when we might be able to get together for that. And then for the longer-term search, for the full-time superintendent, what most districts do and what I have recommended is that we hire a consultant to do that for us. So the process there, Heather is in the process now of putting together an RFP. She will send that out, have it out for about 2 to 3 weeks. We, as a committee, will go through the proposals, and we will invite probably 2 or 3 of the consultants to come and, again, make a presentation to the entire board. I'm thinking that may also have to be an executive session, need to check that out. I just don't know if they would want to present in public and then their competitors are hearing their presentation. So that may be a little bit easier to do, maybe one night at our board meeting. Thinking if we do the RFP, we go through that in February, have them come into the March meeting, and then we can appoint them by April. After they're appointed, the process I'd like to see is we include feedback from all of our constituents. So interviews, surveys, board members, staff, community members, students. You try and get input from everyone to get characteristics of what you're looking for in the next superintendent. Once you have that, then the consultant can start doing the search. They'll probably, put out the job ad, so they'll get some resumes that way. They might reach out to their network. They will do the first pass. They'll go through the resumes. They might even do the first round of interviews. Then they will meet with the entire board, again, in executive session, and give us a short list so we can kind of go through, talk about who we want to bring in for an interview. Maybe we end up bringing in like 3 candidates. Because this is sort of a time-consuming process, and then you have to come up with time that everybody's available and bring people in for interviews. We're sort of getting into the summer. That could be a difficult time. I'm saying best case, even if we can do it in the summer and get the interviews done in July, after we choose the person who we want, now you have to negotiate the contract. You have to get that contract approved by the executive, by the county superintendent. We're probably in September or October by the time that we are actually approving it at our meeting. Now somebody has to give notice. 60, 90, could be 120 days notice. So best case, I'm thinking, is January 1st that we get somebody in here. If we're lucky and can get somebody in sooner, great. But I don't think this is something that we want to rush. We want to make sure it's done right. So. Any questions?
No questions, but I'll definitely say thank you very much for taking the time to chase a lot of things down over the last couple of weeks, put that together, and present it to us. As we shared over the phone, I think that creates a great roadmap of where we're going to be headed for the next year. Really appreciate your time and effort on that. All right. Any other liaison or board comments? Board business? Hearing none, we're going to open up to the second public comment. This will be for general public comment. Doesn't look like there's too many people here tonight, so we'll still provide for 5 minutes. Dr. Moore will put 4 minutes on the timer. I'll have a minute afterwards, so if you hear the beep, that's the warning. And just a friendly reminder, if you have any comments for any of the teachers, administration, or board members, please feel free to direct them at me, and I will encapsulate them and distribute them appropriately. As you've heard just with the earlier public comment, if you come to the podium, write down your name and then state your name and where you're from and let us know what you have to say.
Good evening. My name is Rob Richard. I live in Raritan Township. Tonight I would like to address the board with a couple of concerns and questions. First of all, I would like to ask President Fowler to share with us his thinking behind the appointment of Rebecca Peterson as chair of the newly created policy committee. You see, on April 24, 2023, Mr. Fowler made a motion at the board meeting stating that the board investigation of Ms. Peterson identified evidence of intentional actions that eroded trust and risked the integrity and transparency of the entire board to a sufficient level to warrant a complaint to be filed. That motion passed 8-0 with Ms. Peterson abstaining. Consequently, ethics complaints, plural, C66-23 and C67-23, were filed against Ms. Peterson on behalf of the Hunterdon Central Board of Ed. Complaint C6623, filed on September 5, 2023, specifically addressed allegations of Ms. Peterson's inappropriate interactions with the district's policy vendor, Strauss Esme, on March 7, 2023. Specifically, Rebecca Peterson lied to Strauss Esme, pretending to be a board member of one of Central's sending districts. And this is not the only instance wherein Ms. Peterson acted dishonestly. As you know, she also misrepresented herself as a fictitious parent when she corresponded with Superintendent Moore while she was already on the board. One may wonder what Ms. Peterson's motives are or were, but it seems she may have an agenda. Perhaps it's to do away with policies that she does not like 5756 and 8100, that protect LGBTQ and other marginalized groups against discrimination and harassment. It is ironic, I think, that Ms. Peterson ran for election on a platform of integrity, accountability, and transparency when she has on several occasions acted dishonestly. Was her campaign platform just a ruse? Did she purposefully try to fool the public? Was she as purposefully dishonest in her campaign as she has been as a member of this board? On January 4, 2024, Mr. Fowler was elected president of the board. The next business item was approval of committees and appointment of committees. Ms. Peterson made a motion to create a policy committee, which passed, and Mr. Fowler subsequently appointed her chair of that committee. So here's my question to you, President Fowler. Why would you appoint Ms. Peterson to chair the policy committee when she has gone out of her way to misrepresent herself? Why would you put in charge of policy a person who is so duplicitous? Why appoint someone who you yourself claimed to have violated board ethics standards? Lastly, what is the status of the ethics complaint filed against Ms. Peterson? How much are the lawsuits she has brought against the board going to cost the taxpayers? And isn't the fact that she is being represented by a law firm for which she works an inherent conflict of interest? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rizard. If you don't mind, I'll actually answer your question. I will hope to keep out of a debate, but I'll be happy to answer your question. We're a team up here. We're a team of individual members, and we're all human. I've certainly made mistakes. Everybody else at this table, I believe, has made mistakes, and we're going to continue to make mistakes as human beings. Anybody who's sat at this table also knows that no individual has a power above or beyond anybody else at this table. So I felt it best to put on that committee members that would bring to that committee specific skills that are beneficial to policy writing, policy review, and policy edits. beyond that skill, it takes the entire voting of this board to actually put something in place, and that would be the check I felt that would keep anybody from inappropriately exercising an agenda. I still felt that people that I did put on every single committee had skills that suited and benefited those committees, and that's why I made the choices that I did. You're welcome.
Thank you. I don't often get to come to these meetings because I teach as an adjunct at a college, and I usually have Monday night courses, and this semester I don't, so you got me for the semester. I
I'm
was
sorry,
never a big
your name
advocate.
your name and town you're from?
Oh, I'm sorry, John McKay.
No problem.
Merton Township.
Thank you.
I was never a big advocate of education because when I got out of high school, I saw a lot of people go to college that only went to college to get out of being drafted because it was a tough time. At age 49, I took my first college course. At age 59, I got my bachelor's. In 2015, I was given an opportunity to take a master's program, and I got my master's after 4 years. My master's is educational technology and online learning. One of the courses that were contained in this master's program was how to introduce technology into schools, education institutions. And they said that one of the main ways is to go to the Board of Education. And they felt that the Board of Education should be diverse as far as where they all come from. But they have to have the same objective. And that objective is the best education for everybody. Now, I've watched this school board, listened to the school board, and the only analogy I can give is, you know, if everybody's rowing a boat, it moves forward. If everybody rows a different way, it goes around in circles. And I have the feeling this school board is going around in circles. So I would ask you all to think about it and determine that you all have the same objective, and that is the best education. And as a side note, you're going to be sorry. You're losing one of the best superintendents this school ever had.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming on your night off.
Jay Hoff, Flemington Borough. It's 2024. We made it. We're here. I'm realizing that it is my 10-year anniversary of graduating high school this year, and I wasn't prepared for that, to be honest. So I just wanted to reflect a moment on South Hunterdon's, the little stepchild school to Central, on their motto for a few minutes. It's just 4 simple words: work hard, be kind. I think that the hard work part of that motto we can see here clearly. Today, excellent presentations by some of your staff members here and the students. I'm continually impressed by the students that show up to present, and also at the 2 yearly board meetings where you go through the awards that your students here have won and have earned through hard work and dedication. I also personally, as a volunteer coordinator at a local nonprofit, I work with some of these students, you know, after school hours. They come in, they work hard, they do extra, and they show great empathy and kindness towards others, and that continues to impress me. Also the fact that Hunterdon Central is not just a 1, but a 2-time Blue Ribbon school. It's not a former Blue Ribbon school, since that is not how the honor works. And again, I don't think that we need to worry so much about the working hard when it is obvious that your kids here are intelligent, they're well-spoken, they take the time to learn from their teachers, from the world around them, from each other. They've got these opportunities that I wish I had to collaborate and to own their learning and to not just say, here's all the facts you need to learn, cram them, spit them out on that test, we're good to go. Because that's not how the real world works. That's not how we create understanding and capable human beings. So I'm impressed by the work that this school has done and the working hard. But I am concerned, both here and generally speaking about our world in the grand scheme, about the second part, about being kind. I think there's a lot of people, both here and all around, who aren't working on being kind. There's a lot of niceness, as long as we don't come out and say the ugly part, but that's not kindness. I think a lot of big issues become hot button issues because we don't take the time to sit down and be empathetic and talk them out, because a lot of these issues aren't as scary as we really think they are. And we all are really here for the students because we want them to have these opportunities to grow and to learn and to have skills, not just knowledge, but skills. Critical thinking, asking questions, being curious, not just accepting the answer, but going out and understanding and being capable of changing your mind when you're presented with new information or when you discover something just brand new. So I wanted to encourage everyone to think about for 2024 how we can do better on being kind. Because it's also worrisome to hear about the one student who's dealing with bullying. I was not a popular kid in high school. I was awkward. I was nerdy. I was one of those smart kids who got picked on all the time. So I know what it's like to be in that position, and I don't want that to be the position of any other student, here, South, anywhere. We've also heard over the past year, at least at the meetings that I've attended, some of the students, especially the minority students, the black and brown students, the racial, the LGBTQ students, who are especially not being treated with kindness by their peers and by teachers and others, and that is worrisome, because if they are not safe in their classrooms, they're not learning. It doesn't matter how great the project is. If they're not safe, they're not learning. So again, I want to encourage everyone here to really think about also how we're going to work on being kind and treating each other better. And just one last thought. This is a quote that is commonly attributed to Margaret Mead, a famous anthropologist, and someone I admire, that we should never doubt that a small, thoughtful group of citizens can change the world, because indeed is the only thing that ever has. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jim Vargas. I'm long-term resident of Raritan Township, now resident in Monmouth Beach. I just was looking at something on my calendar, and I realized I've been coming here for the last 19 months. Seems like a really long time. But I had a good chance to see and observe and talk to people that are going on. First, I would like to congratulate those who have newly elected to the board. I know it's really hard. I know it was sometimes brutal. I've talked to most of you. We differ on some things. We agree on some things. But I do believe that everybody that joined the board is a trustworthy person trying to do the best they can. And I do believe that under the new president here, that this board will bring more diversity, inclusion, and fairness to both the students, the school, and the community. So I thank you for that. If I was coming here under different circumstances, my first order asked would be is to remove the current chairman, current superintendent. He's leaving, so we don't have to deal with that anymore. And you can't tell how blessed you are that you get to not only start with a clean slate with a new board, get to hire an interim superintendent, which you can work with, and then hire a full intendant. You really have the opportunity here to do great things for this community, okay? I think you have some cleanup to do. First of all, on Ms. Pagano. There was the incident with her where she was assaulted. I don't think we ever got a full review and understanding of it. You may not want to get into it, but I ask that you really understand it, document it, and come up with a process and practices of how it should have been done and what you do in the future so it never happens again. Number two, issues on people. Ms. O'Donnell and Ms. Peterson were both had taken vocal about what they said and what they did. One was chastised formally, one wasn't. I think as a matter of free speech, it should be done at that, close out the issue, and move on, because they are both people that are trying to work in this. The other person that needed to clean up is Paul Tanko. Paul Tanko was a man who served the military, who served Rutgers University as a police officer for over 20 years and came here to protect people in his school in retirement. And he was told in a letter from the superintendent that he put the kids in danger. He did not. The only thing I've seen in my 19 months here of seeing a person in danger is Nicole Pagano. All right, moving on, what I've seen, two things here is one, on the academic issues, you guys do a great job. I can't believe what I've seen. I hear what I hear about the social studies. The different ways of approaching teaching are unbelievably great. On the social issues, not so much. And here's some of the things I want you to kind of think about. We started a couple years ago with bringing in CRT. Right? CRT is a view of the world that is basically that there's racial things within the law. But we talk about that, and it maybe should be talked about, but other things ought to be brought into it. I mean, you need to be able to talk about the history of slavery, what the world had, what is here, and apply it to CRT. You need to talk about the human trafficking that is going on today that is far greater than it has been in the past. It not only exists in this country, it exists in this state. And we need to understand it. Those are the type of things to do it. When we had the issue when George Floyd was killed, there's a big mass about it. And everybody knows George Floyd's name, and they won't forget it. The people who were involved in that all got the full measure of the law. Yet, if I asked you who Amy Whitaker was, you would go, huh, who is she? She was a woman at the same time that just said simply, all lives matter, and she was killed. She was a single mom, and she died. We ought to tell George Floyd's story, but also Amy Whitaker's story. When you talk about America and CRT, or you talk about immigration, you got to tell people that, yeah, we have immigration problems, but this country has 50 million immigrants. The closest country is Germany with 15 million immigrants. That's it. There are 195 countries in the world. Only 29 of them have 50 million. We have more immigrants than 120-something countries in the world. We are a good country. We've done great things. You have the opportunity here to bring that in, to be fair, to treat balance into it. When you're dealing with any, whether it's gender issues, whether it's policy issues, whether it's children being bullied, you have the opportunity to be great here, but you have to give the whole story, not just one side. And I will say that for the last time I've been here for 19 months, is on one side, it's about indoctrination, not education. Become the Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. 7 minutes. Okay.
Takes 3 people. Good evening. First of all, again, to those of you who are new to the board, welcome.
I'm sorry, name and town?
My name is Reverend Vernon Williams, Raritan Township.
Thank you so much.
I've been coming to these meetings for quite some time. I do appreciate how the board has conducted itself under the past leadership, and I trust that under you, President Fowler, you will conduct yourself with facts, that you will do your proper investigation. I want to say to Dr. Moore, thank you for what you have done during your time of service here at Hunterdon Central, and how you have looked after all of the students, each and every student. It is important for you that as you talk about policy, that you deal in facts, that you don't deal in fantasy, that you don't deal in ideology. It is important because our children's lives are at stake. We heard of a gentleman talks about his child being bullied. That is not something we need to take lightly. I don't believe that you do, but you need to be careful on how you do that. Be careful of how you dismiss some of these things and the treatment that our students need. To listen to someone who is not knowledgeable about what they are talking about. I wish you would teach CRT in the school. Fact is, you don't. And it's never been taught here. It is important to teach the entire history of our country. It is not to be run from. We learn through accurate teaching of our history. CRT has just been made to be a bad word, and all it means is critical race theory. The actual looking at laws, you don't do that in this school. No social studies teacher, no history teacher, but they do teach history, and you need to continue to teach the history. As we have literary material that has been demonized across this country, it is important that you, before you take any action on any literary material or any action on any policy, that you do your due diligence and that you should consult all of the parents, not just some. All of us need to be consulted. There are a number of people who get up here and believe that they have this as a megaphone. They do not speak for everyone. All of our kids need to be valued. All of our kids have value, have worth, especially our kids of color and LGBTQ. Please don't ever forget that you have their lives in your hands as you search for the next superintendent and as you move forward as a board. Thank you.
Thank you. Not, yes? Okay.
Sandra DeVore, Raritan Township. I just wanted to actually piggyback off of something that Mr. Varga did mention. He is correct that there has been a two-tier justice system in this school. We've seen it amongst the board, we've seen it amongst the students, and we've seen it amongst the staff. So there was also a few other items he mentioned, and I know that we're on limited time, but I do feel that Mr. Fowler and Mrs. Duggan, in your new leadership roles on the board, that you will be able to ground the board and that you will remind the board members that their main job is to be the boss of the superintendent. That is your main job. You are to hold that person accountable, you are to manage them, and I think that's something that we have not seen over the last few years, and people can actually go back to past videos from the board meetings and see some of the unrest, I guess you could call it, at some of our meetings. And there was actually one other thing that I did want to mention. I came across an article, and there was a woman, her name is Wei Hua Chin of the Chinese American Citizen Alliance of Greater New York. And this is what she had to say about education. Teaching students to be activists first before teaching students to think is a failure of education. If you do not respect facts and you do not respect logic, you are not capable of making the decisions that are important for yourself in life and the world. Our schools must provide that kind of environment so you have facts and not ideology. And I hope that you all remember that in your search for the next superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone, I will close public comment and open up for board comments. Anybody like to make any comments tonight?
I do. It's unfortunate that Mr. Richard left before any response. The word I think that is important to remember here is allegedly, and I'm going to really encourage people to remember to use that word. Where the ethics complaints are is they haven't been found to even have probable cause yet. That's where they are, which means it's not even found to have the basis yet of whether something is true or not. And where the cases are as they're going along, and the courts will figure that out. And you can come here and continue to throw tomatoes at every single meeting and try to put me in my place. But it has nothing to do with what this board is functioning at doing right now. So I would just ask that you think about considering your speech in a way that is beneficial to both the law and to this board. Thank you.
Anyone else? I guess I'll take a couple of seconds to at least acknowledge two stories we heard that were unfortunate. One was an opinion about one of our teachers that's retiring, and one is about a student that's going through challenges. Being a Central graduate and having family who are Central graduates, I hold Red Devils very close to my heart, so much so that I'm willing to come back here and volunteer my time to help this institution continue. So it is sad to hear that we have students that still challenged to experience things that, quite frankly, went on back in '95 when I was here and probably predated me in what happens in these halls. As a board, I can say all of the people at this table are committed to creating a safe space, because safety is the foundation for learning. You can't start to learn without feeling safe, and that is one of the things that we all talk about in all of our committees, in all of our conversations, is how do we enable students to have a safe and structured and positive learning experience at Hunterdon Central. That is a core foundation, I believe, of this institution, and we're certainly very focused on that. So we will take all of the feedback we heard to heart, and we'll continue to work with our administration, teachers, and staff to continually refine that and improve it as best we can. Thank you all for all of your input. We always welcome anybody's voice at that podium, and look forward to future meetings. If there's no other comments, I'll ask for a motion to convene into executive session with no action items afterwards.
Second.
Can we do an all in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any noes? All right. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
The one over by the makerspace.